What's up, guys? Connor OHanlon here for another episode of the Greater Society podcast. And today we are going to be diving into the long-standing, scandalous Hunter Biden story. More specifically, we're going to be talking about his plea deal that he recently came to about a tax problem and a gun problem, which we'll talk about some of the hypocrisy connected to that later. We're going to talk about Juneteenth, not the history. If you want to go back into some more of the history about it, I talked about that in an episode last year, which was more of a deeper dive onto the history. And this is going to be more about debunking some right-wing reactions to it. I think that that's important as we continue to celebrate Juneteenth, move forward in recognizing some of the major problems that we have faced in this country and frankly overcome. So we should celebrate those. But we will start with that, but not just yet. And then we're going to talk about Supreme Court Justice Alito, his corruption, which is separate from Clarence Thomas's corruption, which is separate from, you get the drill, right? But we're going to talk about some of that and the recent reporting on that. We're going to talk about Penn Ridge, which is a school district here in Bucks County, and the hiring of a group called Vermillion. And we will go over that and the craziness that they're doing, even in Florida, and how they've even rejected it in Florida. So you can tell how radical it really is. And beyond all of that, we're also going to be talking about Robert Kennedy Jr., his joke, if you want to call it, of a campaign, his takes that have gotten him in what I think hot water, but some people seem to be liking him, not the people that you would think, not progressives that are genuine. It's going to be the people that you don't want supporting a so-called progressive. And if we have time, which I forgot to talk about last week, or I kind of ran out of time last week, I also want to tie in another progressive campaign by Cornel West running for the Green Party. And I want to talk about the shortcomings of a campaign like that, even from such a great figure as Cornel West. So, all of that and more on tonight's show. But we will first start with radical right-wing loser Charlie Kirk is a radio host. He is somebody that is trying to basically take the Rush Limbaugh and Mark Levin and Sean Hannity radio route, and he was supposedly supposed to appeal to, I think he's about my age, maybe a little bit older, supposed to appeal to young voters, young people in general, but realistically, the type of person that Charlie Kirk appeals to is your grandpa who thinks that he's cool for listening to a young Republican. Now, Charlie Kirk's ideology is based in religious fundamentalism. He is quite literally a Christian nationalist, not just like oh, somebody online says this, blah, blah, blah. No, this guy is as far right as they come without being, you know, within a certain party that starts with an N. I'll just say that. He is really, really far right, and his takes on race, his takes on gay marriage, on transgender people, I mean, everything you can imagine down the list is as far right as they come. And he is supposed to be the young person's answer to progressivism. And we will take a listen to his take on Juneteenth, and we'll talk about why it's BS.
You will be listening to this episode as it airs on Juneteenth. The heck is Juneteenth?
Juneteenth is a celebration on June 19th, 1865, from where slavery was officially ended in the United States. We'll come back to why the date for the Emancipation Proclamation does not represent the actual end of slavery. That he will bring up. But Juneteenth represents basically the end of the Civil War, where a general got to, I think it's Galveston, Texas, and essentially that was the last official order of the Civil War, and that marked the end of slavery, where slaves were set free. And of course, we will talk ad nauseum for the next 100 probably years about why this is not the end-all be-all, racism didn't end, all this stuff, but it is important to celebrate because it marks the end of one of our original sins in the United States. This is something that we should celebrate, but right-wing forehead Charlie Kirk does not want to celebrate it.
It depends who you ask, okay? But let's talk about what it actually is. And we opposed Juneteenth becoming a federal holiday as it happened.
Remember that John McCain and many other Republicans opposed MLK Day becoming a holiday in the 80s and 90s and subsequent to that. And then, of course, now MLK is just totally welcome in the Republican Party. His ideology is not radical whatsoever, and I'm obviously being facetious because they whitewash the hell out of the history of MLK, who was a unabashed leftist progressive. Yes, he was a Christian, and again, we will talk about this here too, because Juneteenth is also has references to Jubilee, which is a reference to the Bible, even though Charlie Kirk, I don't think it's in this clip. It might be, but I saw it on Twitter in text, claimed that Juneteenth is a pagan holiday, despite the fact that the overwhelming majority, as we have talked about in the past, majority of black voters, black people in America are Christian, let alone religious in general. The vast majority of them are specifically Christian. So the religion that Charlie Kirk supposedly lives by, he wants to follow in the footsteps of Jesus. He just so happens to throw those principles away when the interpretation of the Bible is from a non-white person.
And yes, it is the day that it is mandatory to work at Turning Point USA. We're going to talk about it actually on the day. I say we're given multiple days off for our actual Independence Day, July 4th, 1776.
I didn't know you guys were alive in 1776. You got days off in 1776? That's awesome.
Why is Juneteenth a problem? Not because, again, it's so subversive.
It's not a problem.
On its face value, I have no problem with it. I think it's wonderful to say, okay, liberation of slaves, all that good stuff.
But
No. The issue is that the entire point of it, as per postmodernists do and deconstructionists,
do any of you guys know any postmodernists?
is to subvert July 4th. That has always been the agenda.
That's actually not the case. The Civil War has nothing to do with the independence of the United States from Britain. The Civil War has a inter-country, because remember that the South, that Charlie so loves, I'm sure, seceded from the Union being the United States. They were traitors to the government to protect their rights, to take away other people's rights and treat them as less than human. That is the cause of the Civil War. The ending of the Civil War is a liberating and Independence Day for Black Americans, and specifically ones that were enslaved at the time or formerly enslaved at that point. Yes, it is an Independence Day for them because they did not have the same rights in 1776 till 1865. They did not have the same rights. That whole time frame, that the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution did not protect the rights of Black Americans until the 13th and 14th and 15th Amendment. But Charlie doesn't care about that. He is so worried that you're going to take away from July 4th. July 4th, which we all celebrate in America. Everybody loves the 4th of July, pretty much. It doesn't take anything away from July 4th. He doesn't even say it because of the principles of freedom, of justice, of equality, of the principles of America, the American dream. No. That's not why Juneteenth competes with July 4th. You'll catch this here in a second. It's because the proximity in the dates.
That there is a Black Independence Day and a National Independence Day. The same way that they have a Black national anthem that plays before NFL games. That they have Black-only dormitories and Black-only math classes. It is a neo-segregationist federal holiday.
Charlie Kirk just supports regular segregation.
Is what it is. And they're so tricky, aren't they? Because they say, oh, Charlie, you against the emancipation of slaves?
Sounds like it.
Of course we're not against that, because that's not what this is about. This is a
If he was alive at the time, he would be against it.
Summertime competitor to create multiple Independence Days to further deteriorate, erode, and destroy the celebration of our actual Independence Day.
He just literally said it. It is a summertime competitor to the Independence Day in America. That is the stupidest take that you could possibly have. He's not even man enough to own up to the fact that he's saying like, oh, the principles are the same, so they're competing with each other, which I would love to fight on that ground. He is just saying because it's June 19th compared to July 4th, that they're summertime holidays and they compete with each other. That's how stupid this is. That's how stupid he thinks his listeners are.
I tweeted this out in 2021. In 2021,
that's when Joe Biden signed this into being a federal holiday.
I tweeted out, making Juneteenth a federal holiday isn't about emancipation of slaves. If it was, they would make September 22nd, Emancipation Proclamation Day, a federal holiday.
Wrong.
This is about replacing July 4th, just like the 1619 Project is about replacing 1776. Conservatives must reject this.
The 1619 Project, by the way, teaching people about the original sin. Well, not the original sin, because the original sin of this country is the genocide of indigenous people. The second original sin is slavery. Again, we should be celebrating the end of that. We should be celebrating the end of that. But the Emancipation Proclamation had no enforcement on the freedom of slaves. The Emancipation Proclamation, although it is a great historical document and historical statement and story, did not actually free the slaves. The Civil War did. If you read the history of the time period leading into the Emancipation Proclamation, the intent of the Emancipation Proclamation is different than we interpret it today. We should celebrate the Emancipation Proclamation, but it is not the same as marking the actual end of slavery in the United States. And yeah, we can't have Hanukkah because it beats with Christmas. He actually believes that. Remember, these are the people that are triggered by the war on Christmas. Remember a couple years ago, I had arguments about this at my own home. I won't say with who. About the war on Thanksgiving. The war on Thanksgiving and the war on Christmas. No. We can celebrate those holidays. Look, I am no longer a practicing Christian. I grew up Catholic. I love Christmas. And you know what? If someone invited me over for Hanukkah, I would love to do that too. Holidays are fun. Rituals are fun. Like these things that are not, as long as they're not impeding on anybody else, I would love to go to different types of holiday celebrations. I've gone to celebrate Hanukkah with people here in Doylestown for events. I've gone for Hindu holidays. I'm blanking on which one it was, but it was a summer one, not a winter one. It's okay to not believe in a religion, to not practice a religion, to not practice the culture of a certain area, and celebrate a holiday with somebody. And as Americans, we should want to celebrate this. It makes us better. It is completely acceptable, and honestly diversifies your opinion of the world and will give you a more full and round viewpoint of our country, which is what the American melting pot is supposed to be.
So yeah, I mean, if they want to make an Emancipation Day, just make September 22nd a federal holiday. But now we have a full week of Juneteenth festivities.
Juneteenth is literally June 19th.
A full week.
Dude, we literally celebrate Halloween for a month. We celebrate Thanksgiving for weeks leading up. We celebrate Christmas for months leading up. Basically half of November and all of December and even a little bit of spillover into January. Like, can you just not be triggered over people having like barbecues to celebrate the end of slavery? Like, what kind of childish clown are you?
We have a whole month during Pride Month, and at some point, you got to wonder, and the answer to the question is actually very simple. Why do these people need so much celebration? Why do these people need so many rituals? And the answer is super simple. It's because they're not religious. Well, they're religious in their own way, but...
Yep. See, he had to catch himself because Charlie Kirk is not as stupid as he leads on. Charlie Kirk knows that the majority of black voters, or not even black voters, black Americans, are Christians. He just doesn't think that they practice the right Christianity. See, that is what boils down to being a Christian nationalist, a white nationalist. Because, like I said, I actually really have a fascination with religion. I don't practice it, but I find it interesting. And people that genuinely practice it, I have no problem with it as long as it doesn't impede on other people. However, Charlie Kirk, as a fundamentalist, doesn't believe that other people can interpret the Bible in a different way. In fact, I bet Charlie Kirk thinks that Jesus was a blonde, blue-eyed, jacked man that just looked like Chris Hemsworth and was totally rad, hated socialism, would never would never help the poor, whatever. I'm being facetious, but he goes to say, like, these people need these rituals, meaning all of us. I'll be generous and say he just means doesn't just mean black people. Let's just say he means everybody on, like, the left, because they're not religious. Okay, even the majority of people that are Democrats are Christians in this country, and a lot of people are other religions. It is so stupid, but he catches himself beforehand, and he can't help it. He just can't help it. The thing is that rituals, celebrations, holidays are recognizing things that are good, recognizing the triumphs, recognizing the struggles, and recognizing, frankly, the former oppression and people defeating their oppressors or the systems of oppression. Those are good things. And you know what? Maybe in 50 years, 100 years, we don't need, and, like, don't take me out of context here, don't get me wrong. I have no problem with Pride Month or whatever, anything like that. Or, like, let's just say Black History Month too. Same thing. If we're successful in actually integrating people and building a broader society of people that is not just Eurocentric, not just so focused on one culture, Black history is integrated into history. And then it just becomes history. And you learn about MLK, not in the whitewashed way. You learn about Malcolm X. You learn about Frederick Douglass. You learn about Harriet Tubman. You learn about all the things that lead up to gay rights in America. I'm drawing a blank on the oh my god, Stonewall. You read about these things. You read and learn the history of these things, and then maybe in 50, 100 years, they're just normal. Because that's the thing, is gay people just want to be considered normal. So pride is saying that you should be okay and happy and okay, and not just happy and okay, but proud of who you are. Not that crazy. It's not that radical of an idea. It is okay. It is something that you should be embracing, because that is who you are. The rituals and all these things become less necessary as times become more normalized, which I think would be a good thing. If it didn't have to, it shouldn't be controversial to have pride, but also, like, we shouldn't need it on some level, because it's like we should just accept people for who they are, and then we can just be like, yeah, they're just normal Americans like us. At the same time, these people are triggered. I'll refrain because these are private people. I've overheard conversations. This is not at my house this time, but I've overheard conversations of people that are in my vicinity complaining about Pride nights at baseball games. I'm like, why are you complaining about Pride nights at baseball games, but you're not mad about, like, Italian Heritage Night? You're not mad about, I don't know, Germanic History Night or whatever, Germanic whatever culture night? Like, Because those things exist, by the way. They just care when it's people that they think are the other. It is so clownish, so stupid, and unnecessary. In chat, how can you claim to love America and openly hate on the holiday celebrating one of its greatest victories? Because these people include, I'll say the far right, Charlie Kirk being a part of that, don't actually care about the progress of America. They don't actually care about the building of a greater nation. They don't care about the history and the legacy in the long term. They think America is just fine as it is. And they actually hate that you want to improve it, that we want to improve it. They hate all the changes, despite many, if not most changes, being for the better. They just hate change. They're afraid of change. Someone like Charlie, who's maybe 30, never lived in a world that was this utopian paradise for white middle-aged dudes. Let's just be honest. So when he's alluding to this time, he's being paid to tell people this narrative. Now, he is a genuine believer, but he is being paid and propagandizing all of these millions of viewers and listeners because billionaires want him to, because millionaires want him to, and because those people benefit from the election of Republican officials to local, state, and federal offices that give them tax cuts. Ultimately, that's what it boils down to. Racism, xenophobia, all of these things, it does not solely boil down to classism, but the intersection of it all is so vital. The other is consistently thrown out there to make you think that somebody's out to get you. In fact, let me pull this up. So yesterday, this is not part of the original assistance of what I wanted to talk about on the program here, but yesterday, the Pennsylvania Democrats actually passed the bill for the $15 an hour minimum wage. It's not going to get signed into law in the Senate, but this is what passed. So I'll read you this, and I'll connect it to what I was just about to say. Republicans in the PA House are insisting that nobody in the this is me. Nobody in the Commonwealth even gets paid minimum wage, so why raise it? If that were the case, then their entire logic falls apart because it wouldn't impact businesses, as they claim, or cause inflation, as they claim. I go on to say, it's worth noting there are also no decisive economic indicators that show raising the minimum wage leads to inflation. And a reminder, the minimum wage in Pennsylvania is $7.25, an hourly rate which you can't even buy a Happy Meal. The bill is calling to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. This is still $11 an hour behind the productivity increases since the 1980s and barely outpaces basic inflation calculations. The PA House Republicans don't want working class folks to make at least $31,000 working full time. $31,000 a year. Excuse me. A $15 minimum wage is just the beginning of where PA should be. If we want to continue attracting people looking for opportunity, with an increased wage, people can afford better food, better housing, and better higher education. Nobody serious could oppose these things. But there's one clown that wants to jump into my replies. Andy Meehan, local loser and right-wing radical extremist who ran against Brian Fitzpatrick and got absolutely destroyed, replies to my tweet because he is a fear-mongering, xenophobic loser. He responds to my thing. It doesn't include tips. Many minimum wage jobs pay, many minimum wage jobs people This is how it's horribly written. Make way more on tips. Put on your thinking cap, Mr. Accountant. I reply, no, they don't. Tip workers are in another category entirely, genius, which is true. They are literally broken out in the bill that he is replying to that he did not read. If you've ever worked with somebody that has ever worked at a restaurant, you know that tipped workers are paid less than minimum wage because they receive tips. They are in a different category. The bill puts them at 60% of the minimum wage, right? And then we go on to see, and this will all loop back to my original point here of the xenophobia and the racism that needs to be done to boil down to class, because remember, we're talking about class here. We're talking about minimum wage, which again intersects with gender, sexual orientation, and race. He goes, you think people flipping burgers in Philly cups with water ice should be paid $15 an hour? How much are you willing to spend on a fast food burger? How many small businesses that provide entry-level jobs will close up? How many unskilled illegal alien workers can waltz across our border before the BIPOC citizens are, which I'm surprised he even knows what BIPOC means, are out of a job they choose to work? Let's talk about the impact Let's talk about the impact open borders have on lower income citizens' wages. Have you ever heard of supply and demand? Of course I have, because I went to business school. And Eddie Meehan, despite being a business owner, you should look him up, seems to not understand this. Because when I pushed back on him about tip workers being completely in a different category, I said, since you pivoted because you were wrong, here's the info on tip workers. So I broke out the specifics in the bill. Yes, I do think cooks and servers should make a living wage. All workers should. And I said, next to no businesses would close. Multiple studies show no change in employment. I also say, you somehow also believe immigrants looking for a better life are a threat to America, whereas I see the American dream. Because I am a patriot, of course, and he is a loser and a fascist. My tweet continues, punish big businesses that break immigration law, and then we can talk. Until then, I support raising wages for working class folks to help them better their lives. He responds with a replacement theory article and a tweet that says, we're being invaded on purpose. They want to replace lily white useful idiots like you. You'll be the first ones to go because you'll realize it was all a ruse. You'll speak up too late and they won't need you anymore. Now, this is the type of racism and xenophobia and bigotry that is rampant within the far right of this country. He just tweets this out like there is no problem whatsoever. He is dead wrong, but this is what I'm talking about. They can't even hide it anymore. They're so angry, so triggered, so afraid that they just tweet out nonsense like this. I think they're in the right. This guy can't even win the primary in the Republican Party. But he feels like everybody just believes in this great replacement theory that should make everybody so afraid. That's the normal patriotic take, even though it shows that he hates America and what it's becoming. And all it represents, for that matter. My throat is extremely dry. I don't know why. So, that was not part of what I originally wanted to talk about, but I had to throw it in there. Let's talk about Hunter Biden. So, Hunter Biden is, pulling up the article here. This is probably extremely small for those who are viewing, so I'll just read for you. The article is called Hunter Biden's Plea Deal Will Not Spare Him from a Withering 2024 Spotlight, which is debatable, I suppose, but the plea deal likely to spare Hunter Biden a jail term, which, he's accepting a plea deal for tax problems, tax evasion, basically, from 2017 to 2018 of taxes that he had outstanding, and a gun charge. He accepted this plea deal so he could probably avoid jail time. It's going to be, I think, a $100,000 fine. And Jesus, I'm sorry. And he will obviously just continue to be a political ploy for Joe Biden in 2024. So that's what they're alluding to here. So honestly, we'll take a look at a video about this. But honestly, like if Hunter Biden broke the law, get rid of him. I don't care. The thing is the hypocrisy here is that a tax cheat, and you can, a tax cheat that is sleeping around with women that aren't just maybe not consenting. They're being paid, maybe not, doing drugs, which, again, allegedly, all these things, right? I could be describing Donald Trump before being president, or I could be describing Hunter Biden. So when we talk about like the hypocrisy, it's like, okay, is this Joe Biden or is this Hunter Biden, his son? If Hunter Biden broke the law, put him in jail. I don't care. Nobody cares. Nobody on the left cares. No Democrat cares. If Joe Biden broke the law, he should be tried for crimes. There's no evidence of that. In fact, like I told you last week, there is a special counsel that is investigating the documents that he had, and again, the level of intent coming into play. This is not going the way that they think, the Republicans, and they just expect people to be like, Hunter Biden's laptop, which, by the way, Tucker Carlson supposedly had a copy of. The repairman, who is not supposed to, repairmen are not supposed to just go digging through your files, seeing what you have. But the repairman was also blind. So, like, I'm not, this is no hate on anybody that's blind, but like, how can we, like, are we supposed to believe that a blind repairman has all this information? He saw it, and there's multiple copies of the laptop. He made copies of the laptop. Tucker Carlson had one. He mailed it to himself, lost it. Other people have access to these laptops. Well, this laptop information. Well, why are we only getting pictures of Hunter Biden naked and Hunter Biden, like, laying with, like, a crack pipe? Why aren't we getting the actual crimes that he committed? Why aren't these things out there? Why are we not having the investigations show the actual crimes? Because guess what? The Republicans are investigating this. So if they had evidence, they could bring it forth. But they don't. And in the question chat, is Joe Biden not in trouble for his classified document situation? As of right now, he is not. The same way that Hillary Clinton was not, the same way that Barack Obama was not, and the list goes on, because there's a level of intent. We all can probably agree that the government heavily classifies things that it probably doesn't have to. But as Secretary of State, as a senator, as a president with security clearances, they bring documents out, they leave them in their office, and it's a level of intent. So when asked for the documents back, so Joe Biden, right, they discovered, oh, they have these documents, we need them back, he gives them back. This is the crux of the issue with Donald Trump on the documents issue, which is just one of the 4 potential indictments, 2 of which have already gone through, where he is denying the archives the records back. It is not that he had the documents to begin with, because he was the president. He did not declassify them, as we know from the tape. This is what I'm saying, where if there was evidence of Hunter Biden and Joe Biden committing crimes, it would be out there. The tape states that he says he did not declassify the documents that people were seeing. So he was sharing them, and he has committed a plethora of other offenses that, whether minor or not, whatever, he did, and he's not being charged for them. It is the intent to withhold them after multiple requests to give them back. That is the biggest driver. Now, if 2 months from now, 3 months from now, they come out and say Joe Biden's issue with the documents, we should charge him. Okay. I mean, he's technically the president, so this is the thing why Trump needs to become president, frankly, is because he needs to pardon himself. Which, under the Constitution, we don't know if that is legal. So that would go to the Supreme Court. But guess what? Guess who controls the Supreme Court? The Republicans. So, Joe Biden, if he does get in trouble, he could put that to the test, or they won't try him until he's after he's not president anymore. That's also a possibility. Or they can impeach him, which won't happen probably, but there's a number of different reasons or ways that could go down. So here is a little explanation further into Hunter Biden's plea deal here as I try to fix my throat. Oh, I was already on the screen. Here we go.
If you are the president's son, you get a sweetheart deal.
Have you spoken to Hunter today? Mr. President, any reaction to his guilty plea?
It resolves the issue legally for Hunter Biden. It does not take it off the field for the 2024 campaign, not at all. I think that, as we've already seen this morning, it just feeds into the current narrative out there, and it provides talking points for Republicans.
We know that there's more than one in America who doesn't pay their taxes or doesn't use the right forms and then has to pay, the taxes back with interest. Hunter Biden is no different from thousands and thousands of Americans who are accused of not paying their taxes properly. I don't think that's a charge that really can stick that well in a campaign season. The gun possession issue for Hunter Biden is problematic for Joe Biden, who has really made gun safety and gun control the hallmark of his presidency and also his career as U.S.
Yeah, I don't think it's that big of a problem for Biden, to be honest with you, the gun charge, because most people in America, that's not their main voting issue. But I understand the concept here. Again, like what they were just talking about too, as I was trying to save my throat. The tax evasion thing, Hunter is not the first person, again, not even in the White House within the last, because he's not in the White House, so, but people associated with the White House in the last 5 years that have been evading taxes. Not to say that it's right. I actually think maybe we should, here's an idea. Maybe we should increase the IRS funding, hear me out, to go after the people like Hunter Biden and Donald Trump who are cheating on their taxes. And we should audit them instead of the working class people or the people that are basically living in poverty, because that's where they get easy audits in the IRS. Maybe we should fund the IRS so they could go after people like Hunter Biden and Donald Trump, because they're cheating their taxes. That's the main problem. But the Republicans don't want to go after tax cheats. They want to go after people that they deem welfare queens.
Senator, it would be beyond hypocritical for President Biden to suggest that the law should not be used to its fullest extent against somebody who lied on an application to get a gun.
So there you have it. Obviously a huge bombshell. Huge. And, Biden's just going to be absolutely destroyed by this. And it proves the Biden crime family, they're just at it again. So that's that. Let's go to a little bit of Democratic primary. Yippee. Okay. So, Robert Kennedy Jr., who is Robert Kennedy's son, is running for president against Joe Biden. We've talked about it in passing, but today we're going to take a look at some of his more crazy recent involvements. Just about one or two or maybe three of them, depending on how I feel. And I'll tell you about this from the perspective of a progressive, not just a Democrat, but as a progressive, why Robert Kennedy Jr. is not the choice for president. RFK Jr. is pushing some of the most radical and bad vaccine takes you could possibly imagine. Let's just ignore COVID, right? Which we shouldn't just ignore COVID, because the COVID vaccines are extremely effective in reducing hospitalizations and death. Of course, in the beginning, it was overblown as people were talking. We all know the talking points. It was overblown on how much it was effective in reducing actual transmission. But of course, the same people that just from the beginning didn't want to take the vaccines also didn't believe that masks worked. So that's besides the point. These are the same people that were taking ivermectin, which is proven to have no impact on reducing COVID. They were taking what's the other one? I can't even remember. It's taking a plethora of different things, but that's besides the fact. RFK Jr. has alluded to a number of times, and I don't have all the videos for you. He has alluded to and outright specifically said vaccines have ties to autism, which there is no evidence for. The rise in autism rates are not specific. There is no specific cause of diagnosis of autism in America, or in the world for that matter. But it's worth noting that like 50 years ago, 60 years ago, there just wasn't a name for that. So the diagnoses are getting tighter and better for it. You could just talk about like maybe normal people that shouldn't even put it that way. You could talk about average person in school. And that's why I say like normal person in school 50, 60 years ago, and they were on the autism spectrum if they were diagnosed like today, right? But back then, they were just treated as, maybe a guy with a weird quirk, or maybe somebody that was quiet, or whatever it was. There's a number, autism's a spectrum, and people have deal with different things while they're living with it, right? The idea that mercury or vaccines with mercury in them cause autism. There is no evidence of that. None. There has been allusions to, now RFK Jr. went on Joe Rogan's podcast, and this is not, again, that has nothing to do with COVID vaccine, which he is spreading misinformation about. That is just vaccines in general that he was talking about. He has talked about, and I don't know if this is his true belief or what. Maybe he's just appealing to the people that he's going on their shows. There was an allusion to vaccines being linked to being transgender, which there's no evidence for. And here we have a video of RFK Jr. talking about a bioweapon basically being developed to target people of specific races.
But what I worry about is a WMD like a virus, like a gain of function, something. Do you?
This is on Newsmax, by the way. If you're worried about RFK Jr. really appealing to Democrats, he's on Newsmax, which is the Trump. It's basically the more right-wing Fox News.
Worry about that, because I see that as sort of the next big fight, because those viruses don't see any borders, and they're relatively cheap to do this gain of function. I mean, it's just so. That's what I worry about more than the big hardware.
Yeah, you're exactly right, and we know that the Chinese are developing ethnic bioweapons that are
ethnic bioweapons
designed to attack people of certain racial types, and we're doing the same thing. We've been collecting Chinese DNA, we've been collecting Russian DNA specifically for that. This arms race is a catastrophe. In 1969, we had developed by then nuclear equivalency with bioweapons, so we could eliminate the same numbers of people with bioweapons at, I think, 29 cents a death. They calculated, the Defense Department and the CIA calculated at that time. And President Nixon did the most extraordinary thing. He went to Fort Detrick and he said, we are unilaterally ending the bioweapons arms race. We are giving up all of our bioweapons. We're going to destroy them. We're going to disable the capacity at Fort Detrick, and we're not going to make them anymore. And 3 years later, almost all the nations on the earth signed a charter stopping bioweapons production. And the problem was the CIA continued to do secret bioweapons production in our country. The Russians found out about that and rejigged their program. And then after 2001, we passed the Patriot Act, which reopened the arms race, which basically canceled out Nixon's 1979 agreement treaty and launched a new bioweapons arms race, and everybody else in the world is doing it. And the impacts, as you point out, Greta, are horrific. We need to stop it. We need to go to all those nations, and we need to say to them, get rid of all the bioweapons.
There you go. I don't think I have to add that much to that, to be honest with you. Of course, piggybacking off of this discussion on, weapons and all that stuff, RFK Jr. is adamantly opposed to supporting Ukraine, which, okay, if that's your opinion, so be it. It's not my opinion. I actually do want to reduce the military-industrial complex, but if we are looking at supporting countries fighting back against anti-authoritarianism and pushing into Putin invaded a country, a sovereign nation, and one that is bordering all the NATO countries, and Ukraine is supposed to be not part of NATO. And okay, you can talk about a million different things. Oh, NATO's encroaching upon Russia, moving east. Okay, whatever. The overwhelming majority of people support Ukraine in the war, and frankly, I do too. As progressives, we should want a sovereign nation to have the ability to defend itself. As an ally to the United States, Ukraine should have that right. Is it tons of money and tons of money and tons of money? There's a lot of money being spent in Ukraine. It is billions of dollars. It's not as much as people like RFK Jr. would like you to think. But it is a lot of money. The thing is that money, although, I support the money that's going to Ukraine. Well, let's just say we had double that amount of money. We took that money and we said, okay, Connor, you have that pot over there. You have double it now. What do you want to do with it? And it's all for foreign affairs. I would use that money for the State Department. Build up your diplomatic arm and cut back on the 800 plus military bases. We are not actually putting people on the ground in Ukraine. We are paying American manufacturers to send weapons there. It's not an anti-military industrial complex take to say we don't support Ukraine. Because guess what? If you don't support Ukraine, guess who you do support? Because if Ukraine stops fighting, guess what happens? Putin rolls over and takes over Ukraine. That is what happens. Oh, by the way, have you ever heard of this radical right-wing, now labeled as a hate group, called Moms for Liberty? Oh yeah, well, so-called progressive Robert Kennedy Jr. is going to be speaking at the National Summit here in Philadelphia at the end of this month. You know who the keynote speaker is for Moms for Liberty? Donald Trump. Donald Trump. Moms for Liberty is the group that is radicalizing your school boards, that is destroying public education in America, and so-called progressive Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is going to speak there. Because, of course, that's exactly the type of demographic you need to win the Democratic primary. I don't know what the end goal is here, but you don't win the Democratic nomination by going to Moms for Liberty summits. You don't win the Democratic primary by being extremely anti-vax, which he is extremely anti-COVID vax. In fact, he went on Joe Rogan's podcast and they got, I'm not gonna even show the audio on this. He was asking, they've been asking this guy, I don't know why it's this specific scientist, to be honest with you. The drama is so stupid. They sent basically people after, oh my God, Twitter. Horrible player.
Are you Peter Hotez?
So I'm just going to talk over this video, but this is a scientist that was invited on Joe Rogan's podcast to debate RFK Jr., this is a scientist. This is a scientist, not a lawyer, not a online personality, not somebody that's a professional debater. This is a person that does actual research on medicine and on vaccines and on the science behind it. And they're like, well, why won't you debate? Why won't you debate him? We'll give you money to go and debate him. We'll go debate him. To debate RFK Jr. on Joe Rogan's podcast, because Joe Rogan is definitely a moderator that's totally neutral about vaccines. He has refused to do it so far. And look, do I think this is a tangent here. I think somebody should pay for one of these scientists to get the media training, public speaking, and academics need to do this more broadly. They need to be trained in how to debate and how to frame their rhetoric and their arguments to the public, because otherwise it is just monkey fucking stupid knuckle dragging takes, monkey chimpanzee brains, as Joe Rogan would put it, that are just putting out these stupid vaccine takes. these smooth brain, like, if you're an academic, you have to be able to figure out how to communicate to the public. I am sorry that this is not like the, oh, we should have a safe space for this stuff. No, we shouldn't. We should actually have our officials go out and debate this stuff. That's my opinion. But right now, they won't. This is the type of thing that, this is just online bullshit. And this guy's probably one of the smartest guys in the world, but he's not trained in how to debate. He's not trained in media. But yeah, scientists should be focused on science. I agree. The thing is, we do have to have people that can communicate to the public. Their papers and their research gets buried. So either the researchers need to work with people that are trained in media, or they need to get media training, and they need to be able to engage with the public. Because, like I said, otherwise you get the knuckle dragging takes on Joe Rogan, and which, like, they're approachable. Those takes are approachable. That's the problem, or combating them. Because if you just let them be, well, it's simple. Well, vaccine, COVID causes X, Y, and Z. The COVID vaccine causes X, Y, and Z, which the average person, if you just look into the research for a second, can probably disprove a lot of what their claims are. But you have to know how to find the research. You have to know how to read a study, which, like, we go to college to learn basically how to do that. And it's not the average thing. So my point here is that guys are going to people are going to this guy's house to harass him. That's the type of person that RFK Jr. is inspiring. That is not somebody that is progressive by any means at all. Let's go to this. We'll finish on this, and we'll loop back maybe next week on some of this other stuff. Vermilion. Maybe some of you have heard of it. Maybe not. I've only heard of it because of the recent stuff that's going on here in Bucks County. The Vermilion Group is an education group that tries to create curriculum, if you want to call it that, and policies for school boards. So in Florida, in Sarasota, they rejected hiring these board consultants. Let me see if I can get you some. So, if you've never heard of them, you're not alone, the article says. Vermilion Education helps school boards ensure an accurate and high-quality education for their students. Just so happens that it was created 6 months ago. With principles that tout transparency and how students should not be used by political parties or ideologies, it may sound like just what many drama-ridden school boards in Florida could use, or maybe in Pennsylvania. That is until you take a closer look at the company's founder. It turns out that 3 month, at this time 3 month, when we go to the other article, it's 6 month, which vaguely describes services ranging from guidance to communication to adults, was founded in Hillsdale, Michigan. Its listed resident agent is Jordan Adams, a former civic education specialist at Hillsdale College, the same conservative Christian college the DeSantis administration wants to recreate at Sarasota's new college. Hillsdale has widely been criticized for pushing a biased and politically driven curriculum to its students. In fact, Adams' resume included creating Hillsdale's controversial 1776 curriculum, which critics say promoted politically conservative views of American history. Adams also helped Hillsdale open publicly funded classical education charter schools, including several in Florida. Last year, investigative reporter Katie LeGrone also discovered Adams served as one of Florida's textbook reviewers, who examined math textbooks for prohibited topics, including critical race theory. Oh my God. When we asked Ziegler if Adams' history of promoting conservative values may appear to some as a conflict as a school board consultant, Ziegler responded, "I think my focus again, whether it looks a way or not, is about getting the distractions out and making sure our instructional material for all of our students is appropriate and aligned with not only the standards but to the expectations of our families," she said. Ziegler, an original founder of the conservative group Moms for Liberty, and whose husband was recently appointed chair of Florida's Republican Party, wouldn't say exactly how she heard of Vermillion. So I won't bore you with the rest of this article, but there is a direct connection between Moms for Liberty and Vermillion, who, remember, Moms for Liberty is literally considered a hate group in America. This is the person that they want to bring on to help your school boards. Now, we talk a lot in general about Central Bucks on this show. Well, tonight we're going to shift. This is basically in Central Bucks. But it's not Central Bucks School Board. This is Penn Ridge, which is not really Central Bucks, but for the sake, it's close. Vermillion CEO faces angry crowd at Penn Ridge School Board meeting over curriculum recommendations. CEO's curriculum recommendations were met with criticism as the community demanded his contract's termination. Oh, man. So this is going to be small for those here, but who are viewing, but I will read quickly. Vermillion Education LLC CEO Jordan Adams received a hostile reception at Tuesday evening's Penn Ridge School Board Curriculum Committee meeting. This is last night. They are having a full meeting tonight, voting on this, I believe, where he presented curriculum recommendations to the board. The board is controlled by Republicans, by the way. In a meeting that stretched into 6.5 hours, ending at 1 a.m., board members and the audience got into heated exchanges with accusations of racism, secrecy, and bias. A divided board hired the 6-month-old consulting firm in April to review and develop the district's K-12 social studies curriculum. Under the contract, Adams receives $125 per hour plus travel and accommodation expenses. A Michigan resident, as we talked about in the last article, Adams is a graduate and former employee of Hillsdale College, a private conservative Christian college that has drawn criticism claiming a whitewashing of American history. So, you can go on to read more about what's going on in Penn Ridge. Right now, as we speak, they're voting on these, they're having a meeting about these curriculum approvals. Is my understanding, and I'm waiting for more, and I will probably cover it when it comes out. There are a large number of teachers in Penn Ridge that resigned on the last day of school because of what's going on in the school district. I went to the Central Bucks West graduation, and you can feel, it is palpable, the division and the impact of the school board on students, on graduation. I could feel it. Groups like this, consulting firms like this, have no reason being anywhere near our school. That's my opinion, and I think we would all agree if you're watching this show. As this unfolds further, and I'm looking to bring someone on to discuss what's happening in Penn Ridge, we will dive further into it. For now, if you are somebody that lives in an area where they are looking at bringing on this consulting firm, which happens to be Penn Ridge, Central Bucks, Florida, apparently, you should be on the lookout and you should get involved in your local organizing efforts. Because this is something you have to stop and nip in the bud. Because otherwise, they're just going to continue to run roughshod on our education system. They're going to privatize and use... They're not even going to privatize. They're going to take taxpayer money and give it to charter schools and take it out of your kids' schools. That's their goal. That is their goal. But with all that being said, I'm dying here. And I'm sure you guys are tired of hearing me cough tonight. There's a few things we didn't get to cover. I will... Sure... and yes, it sounds like Vermilion's trying to change curriculum. They are, because they're trying to change the impact of an interpretation of American history, which goes back to the original story we were talking about Juneteenth. Because in their minds, Juneteenth is critical race theory. In their minds, the teaching of anything regards to pride, I'll just say pride generally, because it's not really pride. It's like history of gay people, the history of trans people, but just more broadly, anything regarding like under that umbrella, they don't want to be taught because it doesn't fit their narrative. But the ultimate goal is privatization and or the use of taxpayer money for charter schools. That is the actual driving factor in the Republican Party and by these consulting firms. But yeah, with that being said, there's plenty more that we can discuss. I'm going to throw the reporting from ProPublica about Samuel Alito, who is a Supreme Court justice, in the chat, so go give that a read. But, and if you are listening, I will put that in the description of this episode. I am just croaking here, so I'm going to have to save that analysis for another time. But the long story is, a billionaire takes Alito on trips, and then he has cases in front of the Supreme Court that he doesn't recuse himself and is not disclosed. Which, sounds like Clarence Thomas, which there's nothing that's happened about this. So, good old fancy corruption right in front of our faces. But with that being said, thank you guys for watching. I have a guest coming up in... Special guest. Like 3 episodes from now, 3 or 4, depending. So, I'm just advertising this a little bit in advance. An attorney general candidate, Jean DePascal, who's going to come on the show, and we will talk about the attorney general's race, at least what it's shaping up to be. There's a new attorney general candidate that came out today, and we will in Pennsylvania, we will get as many people on that we can and talk to them. So check that out and stay tuned. If you have guest suggestions, please send them our way. You can go email them at greatersocietymedia@gmail.com or just reach out to me somehow. Or you can, just tweet, whatever, and get somebody on. I think that would be awesome to get different people on. And like I said, we're going to get somebody on from Penn Ridge. More and more guests that we can get over time. But if you are watching on YouTube, be sure to hit the subscribe button and hit the thumbs up. And if you are listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else, you can hit the follow, subscribe, whatever button there is, wherever you're listening, to help us grow the show. You can follow the program on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Greater Society Media. You can follow me on Twitter at Connor OHanlon. And you can support the show for as little as $3 a month at patreon.com/Greater Society Media. I believe that is all for now. So let's get us to at least 150 subscribers. So smash the subscribe button. If you only listen, just go on over to YouTube and hit the subscribe button just so you can help us grow. So, because that'll help. But with all that being said, thank you so much for watching or listening wherever you are. I will emphasize this again because the local is so important. Get involved with your local races. This year, there's so many. It's 5 months until the election, which sounds like a lot, but it is not. So help out a local candidate however you can. That's the best way that you can get progressive people elected. It's the best way you can get Democrats elected. That's the best way you can make progress in your community. But again, with all that being said, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next week. Stay safe.